more than that, you want to honor God.
This is Protestia Tonight.
Hello, and you are watching or listening to Protestia Tonight for the 23rd of July, 2024. This is the program that we hope will be glorifying to God, convicting the sinners, and edifying to the saints, a program with sincere questions and biblical answers. Thank you for tuning in. This program brought to you, as always, by our wonderful, intrepid, and always on the ball in terms of staying informed patron supporters. You can join them by going over to patreon.com/Protestia and signing up. $5.95 a month US will get you started. That'll get you ad-free browsing at protestia.com. And the full version of the program you are listening to or watching right now, Protestia Tonight, which includes our PT VIP, where we answer sincere questions and you get to drive the content and direction of the program. But for this first portion, which we lovably call the freeloader portion, we drive the content and we talk about what we want to talk about. Hopefully it's interesting to you. And if not, well, you know, beggars can't be choosers. So we're going to talk about what we want to talk about. And yeah, I mean, today we're going to be talking about, tonight, I should say, we're going to be talking about the absolute dumpster fire clown show that apparently is the Southern Baptist Convention's ERLC, the Ethics and Religious Liberty Commission, which is out of the official Southern Baptist entities, I guess smallest and smallest funded and everything, and yet the biggest troublemaker in the entire convention. It seems to be despised and hated by about half of Southern Baptists. About every year when there's an annual meeting, people are clamoring to remove the ERLC from existence, abolish it, get rid of it, because, well, it does not support ethics from the perspective of your average Southern Baptist, and that really is the purpose of the organization. We're going to dig into some of that in the PT VIP. We're going to be discussing why I think that a lot of Christians, especially, they misunderstand what voting is all about. It seems like, and especially in the Trump era, every single time we're talking about it, there's a group of evangelical never-Trumpers who well, they're right about a lot of things that they're saying, very clearly right about a lot of things they're saying, and yet I think they misunderstand what it is we're doing here when it comes to voting and when it comes to engaging in our small little role in our broad and complicated and you know, wide system of self-government. We're going to be talking about that in the PT VIP. If it's your first time with us, a few things you should know. Number one, we have some valuable freebies for you over at protestia.com, including signing up for our insurgency email blast, which is kind of like what the Drudge Report used to do when the Drudge Report was, arguably conservative, and it acted as kind of a curation for news and information that conservatives would want to see, or things that mainstream media wouldn't want you to see. They've since gone pretty woke and awful, and we don't recommend them at all, but we do recommend the insurgency email blast, which has a explicitly political bent. It's less of the Christian and evangelical news and more of the political news that we think that evangelicals should still be aware of. And we love you so much that we would like to save you the time of having to go find all of that on your own, especially in the wake of not only big tech, but also big media trying to control the narrative. We like to have our say in that, as well as faithful, loving, serving members of local New Testament congregations. As Christians, we would like to have our say as well, and so we provide the insurgency email blast. We'd recommend that you go subscribe to it. It's 3 days a week for free, 6 days a week paid, or if you support us on Patreon at $5.95 or above, send us a message on Patreon. We'll make sure you get added to the paid version of the insurgency. It is well worth your time. It will save you a whole bunch of time. It's really well done. I highly recommend it. The other thing that you need to know is that this program, while it's out here in the open, out here on YouTube and Rumble and wherever else that we decide to put the program, live streaming on Twitter and Facebook and whatnot, while it is out in the open, it is not intended. The stuff we're going to talk about and the way we're going to approach it is not really intended for unbelievers, those who are not followers of Jesus Christ. This program is intended instead to be edifying to the church of Jesus Christ, which is only made up of the regenerate, only made up of adopted sons and daughters of the Almighty. It's not made up of everybody who claims to be a Christian or who says that they believe in Jesus, or so on and so forth. And so if you are not a loving giving, serving, faithful member of a local New Testament congregation, or are actively seeking to become a loving, serving, faithful, giving member of a local New Testament congregation, this information isn't for you. It's not to go, beat your pastor over the head with it, or to, to equip you to be a lone wolf Christian where you can sort of live the Christian walk outside of the church body and the community that you were intended to live it amongst. And so it wouldn't be for you. If that describes you, we would encourage you to get involved with a church, actively start seeking a church, lean on other Christians that you know and fellowship with them. This program is for you if you are doing those things. Now, before we get into what we're going to talk about, we always talk about the gospel of Jesus Christ. It's a simple, straightforward message, so simple that a child can understand it, yet it is profound and infinite in the depths of its power and in the depths of its importance in the life of believers. And without an understanding of the gospel, without being regenerated and converted and born again as a follower of Christ, none of the rest of this even matters. And the gospel is this. It starts as an answer. Well, it's an answer. It's the good news, and it's an answer to the bad news. And the bad news is that you and me and everybody else who was born, except Jesus Christ himself, was born a sinner, born into sin. We call this the doctrine of total depravity. We were born into sin, and it corrupts every part of our being, rendering us unable to truly worship God or really make any truly righteous or positive movement towards him in any way. We're lost and dead in our trespasses and sins, rebels against the Almighty, and on the fast track to eternal punishment in hell. Deserving so. That's bad news. I mean, that's bad news for any human being. And yet, the good news is God so loved the world so much that he gave his only son, Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ was born of a virgin, not inheriting this original sin that the rest of us have, lived a perfect life, earning righteousness that we could not earn, and then out of love for his people, traded that what he earned, his righteousness, his acceptance before the Father, he traded that for a death on the cross to pay the price for our sin, the sin of those who would be adopted into the family of God. Those of us that place our faith, hope, and trust in Jesus Christ, repent of our sins, turn from our wicked ways, and follow him, have salvation as a free gift. It's a gift where we get Christ's righteousness. We're seen as righteous before the Father, accepted, no longer under his condemnation. And Jesus stood in our place and paid the price to the Father. There was a price to be paid for sin, and that price was death. Jesus died on the cross in our place, was buried, and on the third day raised by the power of the Holy Spirit, conquering death, proving that the payment that he paid for sin was accepted by the Father, acceptable to the Father, and then ascended to the right hand of the Father, now sits at his right hand, interceding on behalf of his people. And that is the good news of the gospel. It is salvation for the sinner, salvation for the lost person, for the condemned, for the hopeless and dead in trespasses and sins. And that is every one of us that now calls Jesus Lord, is a follower of his, believer in him, places our faith, hope, and trust in him for our salvation. And it's the good news that makes any of the rest of what we're talking about even matter at all. If you have questions about what that means or how to be saved, what it means to place your faith, hope, and trust in Jesus Christ, who Jesus actually is, because there's a lot of false ones out there, a lot of false religions and false prophets and false teachers that will try to get you to place your faith, hope, and trust in a false Christ. This is common. That's what ministries like this exist for. That's what churches exist for. That's what really every believer should be doing in their personal work of discernment, is being able to tell the difference between what's right and true and what's almost right and true, but not right and true. That's what we're doing here. And in pursuit of that, we dig into the ins and outs and the everyday goings on in evangelical Christianity. And this story is, it's one of those. I couldn't believe over the past really week or so, after the attempted assassination of presidential candidate, former President Donald Trump, the resulting supposed, as far as we can tell, stepping down of President Joe Biden from running for re-election, very uncommon, It's very, very normal for a sitting president to be the incumbent of his party and run for re-election. The scandal and controversy that all of that has presented, and then in our own little corner of evangelical Christianity, our own little corner, if you're Southern Baptist especially, but in our own little corner here, we have our own stepping down, not stepping down, what's going on scandal involving ERLC President Brent Leatherwood, who was the, I guess, protege, mentee, whatever you want to call him, of Russell Moore, who was the former president of the ERLC and left for woker pastures over at Christianity Astray. Christianity Today, we like to call it Christianity Astray, a garbage rag at this point that we wouldn't recommend anybody rely on for anything except identifying where the current zeitgeist is among woke, liberal, leftist, progressive Christianity that is still attempting to sort of, run a third way interference and fool regular believers into thinking that they're actually solid on anything. We would only recommend it for that. Here at Protestia, we have a subscription to Christianity Today, so you don't have to. For the stuff that they like to say and hide behind the paywall, we'll take those arrows for you and report on it over here, largely for free. So just throwing that out there. But in this case, Brent Leatherwood, who is the current president of the Ethics and Religious Liberty Commission, we believe, and it's hard to tell, but we believe that this whole fiasco that's happened the past couple of days, where the ERLC supposedly, the trustees supposedly removed him as the president, only to find out the next day, oh, they didn't remove him as the president, that there wasn't an actual vote, he's actually still the president, and they backtracked substantially. We tend to think, and I don't have direct evidence of this, but we tend to think that the straw that broke the camel's back and started this whole thing was Brent Leatherwood, basically when Biden supposedly stepped down, again, by non-official letterhead on Twitter X, and the signature didn't even look like his. And then he winds up, and I'm going to play this for you, I found this incredible, winds up supposedly phoning in to Kamala Harris while she was making some sort of campaign stop to talk about how he's fine, everything's fine, yada, 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 yada. That audio turned out to be AI generated by most accounts. We'll play it for you. You can decide for yourself. But in the wake of all of this Biden supposedly stepping down from campaigning and not going to be the Democrat candidate any longer, Brent Leatherwood, who supposedly represents what Southern Baptists are concerned about in the realm of ethics and politics and government and lobbying and sort of culture war issues, issued a statement and wrote an op-ed at the Baptist Press, which is the SBC's Pravda, like the media arm of the Southern Baptist Convention, saying that how selfless it was that Biden would do this and step down, how selfless it was that Biden would put the country first instead of himself, as if anybody with any brains thinks that that's what any of this was. Assuming we can even take it at face value and say, yeah, Biden made a decision to step down of his own volition because he realized what we've all realized for years and years, that he was senile and it was a risk to the country. This was the ERLC, the Southern Baptist Convention's ethics arm, is going to come out and say this represents selfless behavior on the part of Biden and the Biden campaign and the Democrats, was insanely ridiculous. This was the article, the op-ed that was published a couple days ago over at Baptist Press by Brent Leatherwood, labeled under ERLC and World Politics. And let's dig into it just a little bit. So he said, today, July 21st, is an astonishing moment for American history. President Joseph Biden, like everybody calls him Joe Biden. They have for 40 years. But Brent's like, Joseph Biden made the right decision for the country by announcing he would no longer pursue his party's nomination for president, allowing Democrats the ability to identify a new standard bearer for the November election. Now, let's stop here for a second. Anybody representing the theology, the doctrine, the core beliefs of Southern Baptists should be able to very quickly, very easily identify substantial differences between the standard of the Democrat Party and the standard of the Republican Party. Neither one of them are perfect. Republicans got their problems too, but to claim that there's any sort of equality between the two, or that a professing Christian who believes in Jesus, accepts the inerrancy of Scripture, and applies it to their life in any sort of consistent way, would have no problem understanding the differences in the Republican and Democrat Party platforms. The Democrat Party platform is basically a list of commandments God told us not to break. It's like the anti-God's law standard in politics. But Brent Leatherwood's, not to be stopped here. He says, the president's announcement follows weeks of concern about his mental acumen and physical health. It was just weeks, huh, Brent? Just weeks of, nobody said anything about Biden's a lack of mental acumen until just a few weeks ago. Yeah. I mean, this is the fact that he would actually sit down and type this and then claim this somehow represents what Southern Baptists think it's disqualifying in and of itself. This is, wow. He said there's widespread call from media personalities, donors, and elected officials for him to withdraw. There's been a widespread call for a much longer than that. He goes on to talk about, well, it's this development is historic, but it's not without precedent, blah, 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 blah. Then he says, President Biden's announcement is clearly the correct decision. So no mention of the fact that Biden now supposedly saying, I'm stepping down because I'm not capable of being the president for the next term. That's what it is, right? It's either Biden saying, again, assuming it's legit, that he is not, he can't finish the campaign. If he can't finish the campaign, he's not capable of being president, which of course we would argue he's not capable of being president right now, if any of this is the case. But what it really reveals is that all of the evidence that has been put forth, that he was suffering from serious senility, serious cognitive defects, serious problems like this that have been out for years now, did not become a concern for the Biden team, the administration, the Democrats, until they realized that it was not politically viable. Until they realized, man, he can't win anymore. Everybody knows now. Even the liberals are realizing this is untenable. We can't push him over I should say drag. We can't drag him over the finish line anymore. And so that's why this decision was made. Assuming it was Biden or the team or whatever, I don't think he's capable of deciding what to wear anymore from day to day. So I think these decisions are being made by other people. But to say this was the correct decision with no context, to say the only reason they made this decision was because he was politically dead in the water. That's why they made the decision. They didn't make it out of selflessness and to put the country first. And yet Brent writes this like knowing this would be permanently online for anybody to analyze. So clearly he thinks this is a entirely defensible position as a supposed conservative Christian. Our nation deserves a leader able to carry out the high demands of the office of president. Currently, there are crises facing this nation which require much from anyone seeking to hold the office: an immigration crisis at the border, economic discontent from many, international threats with a resurgent Russia and emboldened China, so on and so forth. So Brent's like, well, Biden made the right decision to step down because all of these issues are really important. Now, why they're important, or what the Southern Baptists would say are the right positions biblically on these, he's not going to weigh in on, right? He goes on to talk about it's curious that he's going to endorse Kamala Harris. Again, no mention of how leftist all of their positions are. So he finally says, yesterday we're staring at a national election few Americans wanted. Now, with this extraordinary decision by President Biden, the landscape has changed. Major political parties, voters, Americans in general face a number of choices between now and November. I pray that as we move forward, examine the candidates for office and determine how we will exercise our right to vote, we Christians do so in ways that protect our fundamental rights, engage our neighbors about these cherished freedoms, and reflect the biblical morality. And yet he won't even try to mention the biblically moral thing to do in this presidential election. He only wants to signal left, right? He puts this out to say, like, I don't know anything about actual, positions, we're going to be sort of agnostic on that. We're not going to tell you, as the Religious Liberty Commission of the Southern Baptist Convention, if there are any if there are any biblical, morally binding differences between Republicans and Democrats in this election. We'll leave that up to you guys. I mean, which, like, this is their job, by the way. This is the whole reason the ERLC supposedly exists, is to advocate for Christian ethics in the public arena and in government and in lobbying and things. That's why they exist. Instead, Brent Leatherwood's wasting his time and wasting everybody else's time and signaling to the world, we want to be your friend and acceptable to you, by patting Biden on the head for the selfless decision of stepping down. We see Russell Moore, the prior head of the ERLC and mentor of Brent Leatherwood, retweeting Joe Biden the same day that Leatherwood puts this out. Joe Biden's letter. Now, if we look at this letter, it's not on a presidential letterhead. That signature does not match Joe Biden's signatures. It's close. I mean, somebody tried, but doesn't match his signature. And a whole bunch of stuff I don't think that Joe Biden would be capable of writing at this point, even if he tried. And Russell Moore is like, the right call for our country. Thank you, Mr. President. Yeah. And followed up by what happened next. This was on Baptist Press. Again, the SBC's media arm, the next day, 6 p.m., July 22nd, that was yesterday, saying, breaking, Brent Leatherwood removed as president of the ERLC. So we're like, well, this seems to be connected. And the claim, I don't know if they left the article up as it is. Yeah, it looks like they left it up even though there's been a change. Yeah, so they have an editor's note here, but they said the ERLC announced Monday night that President Brent Leatherwood has been removed from his position. He has served as president since September 2022, so didn't even make it 2 years before this happened. So a statement from the ERLC, they published this on their official channels. In accordance with our bylaws, the Executive Committee of the ERLC has removed Brent Leatherwood as president. Further details as well as plans for the transition will be provided at our September board meeting. Until then, the Executive Committee of the Board of Trustees, that's again of the ERLC, will assume directional responsibility for carrying out ministry assignments. So they put this out there, and then right after this, everybody flips. Russell Moore puts out here, shameful and disgraceful, a great Christian man who lived through his children barely surviving a school shooting. Apparently that was relevant to Russell Moore, and we know why it was relevant, because Russell Moore's a leftist, and so he immediately trots out standpoint theory to say, well, Brent Leatherwood is somehow more capable or more qualified to do the job of president of the ERLC because his kids survived a school shooting. What that has to do with it, I don't know. He won't explain it. You're just supposed to, treat Brent Leatherwood with kid gloves on account of the Covenant school shooting. Russell Moore saying, Southern Baptists, how much more of this are you going to let go on? As if he's not the biggest duck in the puddle, even being outside of the SBC. Russell Moore has no room to challenge anybody's ethics when it comes to what has been done via the Southern Baptist Convention. Russell Moore was the one, a lot of us remember this, who wrote a letter. Well, he wrote a letter and then it was leaked, quote unquote, leaked out there back in 2021, where he basically claimed to be aware of all sorts of sex abuse in the Southern Baptist Convention, and yet didn't report it to anybody. And like he wanted credit for this, as the SBC was about to set off on its sex abuse task force adventure back in 2021. I always describe it as Russell Moore rolling a grenade under the tent of the SBC before he left, and that's exactly what he did. He's got no room to lecture Southern Baptists on anything. He has been one of the most shameful heads of any Southern Baptist entity in the last 10, 15 years, and that's saying something. I mean, that's a pretty low bar, for a lot of us that are concerned about what goes on in the SBC, and Russell Moore's the worst. He is absolutely the worst. So this happens, Leatherwood being supposedly removed, as the head of the Ethics and Religious Liberty Commission. And then a day after, or this morning, I guess it would be, the organization retracted the announcement, saying there was no authorized meeting, vote, or action taken by the EC. Kevin Smith has resigned as chair of the executive committee. Now, for those of you that you like me, your head is always spinning with committee on committee on committee and trustees of this and that and the other. The way that this is set up is the entities of the Southern Baptist Convention. So the ERLC, the seminaries, the North American Mission Board, the International Mission Board have trustees, a board of trustees who are responsible for legally responsible for the entity. They're the legal representation of that entity at that time. Baptist churches work this same way. There's trustees of a church who act as the legal representation of that entity. And in each of those boards of trustees, there's what they call an executive committee, which is like, say you may have, a dozen trustees, 20 trustees, 30 trustees. There's a board of trustees, but then the executive committee is a smaller group of those trustees that kind of does the more of a day-to-day operation kind of a role. The Southern Baptist Convention works the same way, where the Southern Baptist messengers comprise the convention in the 2 weeks or the 2 days a year when the convention meets, wherever they meet for the annual meeting. But then there is an executive committee of the Southern Baptist Convention, which are, Southern Baptist church members who act as the more day-to-day operation. So the ERLC has a board of trustees, and then they have an executive committee of that board of trustees, which is like 4 or 6 people, something like this. The chair of the trustees of the ERLC, or the chair of the, or you'd say maybe the head, the chair of the executive committee is how they describe Kevin Smith. Is Kevin Smith? He's pretty woke. We don't have time on this Protestia Tonight to get into all the details of Kevin Smith, but that information is out there. He's pretty woke. Apparently, as we figure this out now, apparently he acted unilaterally. Although I cannot imagine that somebody who is pretty woke like Kevin Smith would have gone out on his own and claimed, as he apparently did, that there was a decision made by the executive committee of the ERLC trustees to remove Brent Leatherwood as president if he didn't have a good word from those executive committee members that they're all on board with this. This is not uncommon for organizations like this, who they make a decision, like maybe the chair, in this case Kevin Smith, he's got it on good word from other executive committee members that they're all on board with this action. And so they announce the action so they can get wheels spinning for how we're going to replace this guy and all stuff like this. And then they officially put it down at some later date. It's not that uncommon. But what happened in this case, as far as we can tell at this point, is after he made this announcement, the Russell Moores of the world, all the leftists and liberals and the worldlings that are invested in Brent Leatherwood remaining at the ERLC and having this liberal voice, this platform from which to lecture regular SBCers, and a platform through which to signal to the world that the SBC is not as fundamentalist conservative as they all claim that it is. Those who are invested in Leatherwood staying in that position freaked out and then started doing a little bit of digging and found out, oh, wait a minute, there hasn't been an official vote taken on this. This hasn't actually happened. And so then they get on the phone with the trustees of the ERLC. They get on the phone with the executive committee of the ERLC, and they say, "Really? I mean, you're on board with this? So I mean, Kevin Smith is out there saying that Leatherwood's removed. I can't believe you would do such a thing. That's so awful." And they start putting the pressure on these people behind closed doors, like, "Do you realize what you're going to do? And you're never going to have, you're never going to be anybody in the SBC." They start putting back, behind closed doors pressure, and then realize once they put enough pressure, wait a minute, you mean you haven't actually voted on this? You haven't actually officially made this action happen? And they're like, well, no. And so now all of a sudden they got a different strategy. Now it's, we're going to expose that you put this out here before doing the official action. Unless you retract, unless you pull back and say, no, Leatherwood's good. You know, we didn't take this action. Unless you throw Kevin Smith under the bus. And by the way, they're going to get on the horn with Kevin Smith and say, if you're going to have any future in the SBC, this is what you got to do. We'll put this in the New York Times. We'll put this in the Washington Post. This will be on Religion News Service. It'll be all over the place. You'll be dead to us unless you take the fall for this, unless you resign and take the fall for getting out ahead of the process and saying something that, that you didn't actually vote on yet. They're putting pressure on they're putting pressure on Kevin Smith at the same time. So as this is all going down, all of a sudden you see an entire, a 180. And then this is reported over at the Baptist Press, same place. Brent Leatherwood remains president of the ERLC. ERLC executive board members. So this is the EC of the ERLC. Say board chairman Kevin Smith acted alone. He acted alone. Now, does that pass the smell test? Well, of course it doesn't. Kevin Smith is not going to get out there and publish from the ERLC's official social media channels. Their official the official outlet here, the Baptist Press, is not going to be reporting that Brent Leatherwood's been removed as president of the ERLC unless he knew he had the votes, unless he knew that he had people on the executive board who are on board with doing this. That does not pass the smell test. And so now the early morning release from the ERLC, that's this morning, says, as members of the ERLC's executive committee, we formally retract the press release which was sent yesterday. There was not an authorized meeting, vote, or action taken by the executive committee. That's true. I think that's true, that there was no official action taken yet. Again, Kevin Smith would not have put this out there unless he had the votes. So what happened was he got out ahead of the process. And then Russell Moore and the liberals that still have their hands all over this organization, a lot of influence in here, the media organizations, probably other influential Southern Baptists are on the horn with the executive committee trustees, the ERLC trustees and the executive committee of the ERLC, basically about to shame them for, I can't believe you did this, when they realize, oh, this hasn't even been done yet. So call Kevin Smith, and he's like, he's probably saying, well, yeah, well, so-and-so's on board, and so-and-so's on board, and so-and-so's on board. So we're getting the process moving, but there'll be an official vote to do this very soon. And they're saying, yeah, there won't be, because we've convinced these other trustees to backtrack. They're not with you anymore. You thought they were with you. They said they were with you enough that you would go publish this out in the open, and now they're not with you anymore. And by the way, Kevin, if you ever want any future in the SBC again, or even Big Eva again, you're going to take the fall for this one. We don't even like what you did, but even more than that, we caught you with your hand in the cookie jar. The process has not actually been done. We've been able to scare these other people back into line, back into compliance. And I mean, the entire thing. And by the way, if you want to see, I mean, there's a list here, the ERLC's officers. Got a list of them here, and then talking about Kevin Smith, who's pastor of Family Church, West Palm Beach, Florida. He previously served as director of the Baptist Convention of Maryland, Delaware, and has been on the ERLC board since 2018. So again, it's like he's connected to the organization in a way that they can exert this kind of pressure over him. And apparently he thought they were going to be able to remove Brent Leatherwood. He had the votes to do it. He wouldn't have put this out publicly if he hadn't had the votes to do it. And then the machine got to work, and in getting to work and putting the pressure on these people, they realized the vote hadn't even been taken, and they were able to reverse course. That's what happened. But what it really indicates, and I'll leave you with this before we get over to the PTVIP, what this realistically indicates is that that the ERLC is uniquely unqualified to do the work that they're supposed to do. The ERLC, Ethics and Religious Liberty Commission of the Southern Baptist Convention, is supposed to advocate for biblical ethics, advocate for biblical morality in the public square. Well, what does that involve? That involves standing up for biblical truth, biblical morality in the face of worldly hatred. It's always going to involve that. The world doesn't want any part of what the Bible teaches about what's true and untrue, what's ethical and unethical. Doesn't want any part of that at all. And so a properly functioning, properly courageous, properly standing ERLC should not be the friend of the world in any respect. It wouldn't be. It couldn't be. Not if it was really actually ethical in a biblical sense. And yet, what do we find time after time after time? We find the Russell Moores, the Brent Leatherwoods, making common cause with the world, being friendly with the world, trying to explain to the world why the Jesus that we worship is really not opposed to most of what the world wants. The biblical ethics really indicate just like a fair and open election process. And Christians, I mean, no matter what side of the political aisle they're on, Republican or Democrat, it's all good to the ERLC. Southern Baptists really aren't the bad guys, really not the enemies of the Democrat Party or the big government establishment who is busy at the moment, right as we speak, planning more ingenious ways to remove religious liberty from real Christians, from professing Christians. No, the ERLC wants to remind them that the Southern Baptist Convention are their friends. It's not so bad. All we really want is just sort of be left alone over here and keep our little fiefdom, our little big Eva fiefdom, where we have jobs and job security and platform and prestige in our little corner of the world called the Southern Baptist Convention. And we'll make nice with you as long as you sort of let that be. Russell Moore and Brent Leatherwood and their types are bought and paid for by the world. Their positions and their influence is based off of their acceptability to people that hate God. That's the truth. And you might think that that's a little bit too aggressive. No, we got the receipts. Head over to Protestia, search ERLC, make a decision for yourself. The stuff that we've written about and published and exposed over years and years and years is undeniable evidence of exactly what I'm telling you. And it needs to continue to be exposed. But at this point, could an event have happened to more obviously expose the worthlessness of the ERLC? When someone like Tom Askell, a founder, stands up there at the meeting and offers not a motion to abolish it right at this moment, but the first of 2 votes by the messengers that would have been needed to get rid of the ERLC, and then says, because Tom's a nicer guy than me, hey, if we approve this, and we should, this gives the ERLC a year to right the ship, to get this stuff figured out, to figure out why the president of the ERLC is patting Joe Biden, God-hating Joe Biden, full abortion supporting Joe Biden on the back for his selfless act of stepping down, not when we all knew he should step down, years and years ago when he was senile, couldn't put a sentence together, but only when it became politically untenable, only when it actually threatened to harm the Democratic Party's political ambitions did they force him out. That's what happened. I mean, listen to this real quick. I forgot to play this for you, but you probably should hear it. This is somebody, I don't know who Matthew Sabia is, but this is pretty interesting. The supposed call between Kamala Harris, when Joe Biden calls in and starts talking to her, that audio was uploaded back to 11 Labs, who makes AI generated voices from people's real voices. And yeah, he uploaded it there to see, hey, was this generated with AI? Watch this video for yourself. So he's uploading right now to 11 Labs.
Yesterday's news was surprising, and it was hard for you to hear, but it was the right thing to do. I know it's hard because you poured your heart and soul into me.
Okay. Let's just go on old 11 Labs and see if that's really all they probably used for this. So, upload. There we go. And let's see what we got. Yeah, looks like they didn't even really try.
So 98% probability, according to this video, I have no reason to disbelieve this at all. 98% probability that the supposed call from Biden to Harris was AI generated. And there's a reason. I mean, that's never been, people aren't calling in anymore in 2024 if they want to make remote appearances. We've all been Zoom calling for years now. So if Joe is really just fine, he's just in Delaware and getting checked out and making sure he's not giving anybody else COVID and da-da-da, there were no technical reason whatsoever he would have needed to audio call. Unless they thought they could get away with fake audio easier than they could get away with fake video. And it's a little easier to get away with, but they didn't get away with it. We're still suspicious of the whole thing. I've never been, as I think John Harris said it this way earlier today, never been really a time where the trust in our institutions has ever been at a lower level. And it's this kind of stuff that causes that. Over at Meg Basham over at the Daily Wire, just recently posted this as I started to record this video, and I think it's worth reading and going through. She posted on X. So this is who is backing, back to the ERLC, by the way. This is who is backing Brent Leatherwood in the ERLC. This is Eric Costanzo, lead pastor of South Tulsa Baptist Church. Costanzo has opposed border enforcement like Title 42, the policy that allowed U.S. to turn away illegal immigrants who posed a risk of spreading communicable diseases, and believes this guy at the ERLC, quote, marginalized voices will, quote, save the church. So totally woke intersectionality. Seems like someone who represents the views of average rank and file Southern Baptists, question mark. So this is a screenshot from Eric Costanzo's book, Inalienable, How Marginalized Kingdom Voices, which is just woke evangelical gobbledygook. Marginalized kingdom voices. You notice this happens in Christianity and evangelicalism all the time, that we take words and we just repurpose them for generalities, things that people don't know the actual meaning of, so that we can insert our meaning later. They're so general, you'll feel like you have to accept them because it sounds good, but then later they're going to stuff in whatever meaning they want. Kingdom is one of those things. Kingdom diversity, kingdom voices, blah, blah, blah. This is the description from Eric Costanzo's book. The American church is at a critical crossroads. Our witness has been compromised, numbers down, reputation sullied, due largely to our own fault. The churches, get this, ethnocentrism, consumerism, and syncretism have blurred the lines. Pastor Eric Costanzo, might be Costanzo, I don't know, whatever. And these other dudes find that for the church to return to health, we must decenter ourselves from our, again, another gobbledygook nonsense word, decenter ourselves. It sounds a lot less, a little harder to grasp what he means than if he said we must remove ourselves or separate ourselves or divide ourselves or whatever. We're going to decenter ourselves. You notice the feminized language that this is, and it is nothing against women who should be feminine, but this is not direct language. This is not something we can actually measure and determine at all, and that's purposeful. And we must recenter on the undeniable, inalienable core reality of the global transcultural kingdom of God. Nonsense. Total nonsense. So, yeah, this is Eric Costanzo over at the ERLC, and this was him putting out, I'm a trustee at the ERLC. Sorry, I got to keep like the sissified lisp after reading his book description, because that was just garbage, nonsensical garbage. Our president Brent Leatherwood, was not fired. See the press release. Brent deserves countless apologies. Yeah, there again, the over generalized, emotionalized language. Countless apologies, as many as you could put out. If you put out 5 apologies, he deserves one more. 6 apologies, we should probably get to 7. Maybe he deserves 2,000 apologies for this error and all the assumptions that came with it. He has proven, get this, he has proven to be a faithful leader and man of integrity. Really. So integrity was keeping evidence related to a school shooting away from the American people, criminal evidence, for no reason whatsoever. No reason whatsoever. Brent Leatherwood has lobbied consistently to that it was okay for the families at the Covenant School of the Covenant School kids to keep criminal evidence away from the American people on the grounds of copyright. Somehow they own the copyright to this criminal evidence, which a total abuse of the law for somebody who claims to be wants to be the president of ethics in the Southern Baptist Convention, advocate for ethics. It is not ethical in by any stretch of the imagination to claim copyright protection on the evidence of the school shooter's manifesto in the Covenant school shooting. Copyright law is intended to protect the ability to monetize the content. It is not a censorship tool. And anybody with any shred of ethics would know this. But instead, we got the guy representing us as Southern Baptists. I'm still Southern Baptist. You know, roast me for that one. I think I probably deserve it at this point. The guy in charge of ethics for the Southern Baptist Convention is claiming that it's okay, that it's ethical to employ copyright protection to censor the evidence surrounding the Covenant school shooting. Why is he doing that? Well, because he wants to push gun control. Because he doesn't want Southern Baptists to be seen as against transgenderism. We very clearly are. But, you know, the world is not as against transgenderism as we are. So, you know, us identifying and noticing that the school shooter was a transgender, you know, quote unquote. Of course, that thing doesn't exist. But noticing that the school shooter was a biological female claiming to be a male, and that those kind of problems are overrepresented in things like school shootings is something Brent Leatherwood doesn't want you to know and doesn't want the world to think that the Southern Baptist Convention is concerned about. So what does he do? He supports the idea that the parents should be able to censor evidence of this crime, this horrific crime, the school shooting, censor the evidence based off of copyright. Now, unless Brent is going to say that the parents are going to make a mint off of this, they're going to sell it to a book publisher later, and maybe that's what they're going for. I don't know at this point. Copyright protection is wildly unethical in this case. Wildly unethical. And the judge that granted that and found that to be tenable is a moron. But that's the clown show that has become the Ethics and Religious Liberty Commission of the Southern Baptist Convention. Yeah, we'll keep following. We'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. But yeah, this back and forth nonsense that they've pushed with this it would be funnier if it wasn't so darn sad. Absolutely terrible. Anyway, thank you so much for listening or watching Protestia Tonight for the 23rd of July, 2024. Stay tuned to Protestia for all of your latest in Christian polemics and discernment news. If you are a patron supporter listening to this or watching it on Patreon, stay tuned. There is more. We got the PTV IP coming up. We're going to see how many people we can make think differently or whatever. Thank you so much for listening. We'll see you again next time. As always, Semper Reformanda.